6 outbound tips to break away from the status quo. Yeah, the interesting part
Yes.
when we titled this, I'm like, the status quo sucks right now. I mean, the status quo is at like missing numbers, and again, I don't know, Taylor. You talked to lots of teams, like just so many teams this year. Part of it's the economy for sure, right? There's other kind of headwinds, I'd say.
Yep.
But man, has it been a tough year for people to break through, and I think it's a culmination of a lot of things. Some of it, I call it acts of God, or things you can't control, and other
Yep.
it's kind of self-inflicted. And so I'm really excited for this conversation where hopefully we can have the conversation around what are some tactical things. And that's what I love to do, is get very tactical. What are some tactical things that we can do, especially like now's a great time of year, right? To like think about next year, what we're going to do differently, etc. So I'm really looking forward to the conversation. If you're joining us on Zoom or on LinkedIn, make sure drop in like where you're joining us from and what your role is. I'm always curious. Hey, do we have some more sales development? We have sales leaders, so feel free in the chat. Laura Hill from San Mateo. I actually used to work in San Mateo back in the day with Career Builder. We got Atlanta AE in the house, sales enablement in Charlotte. Great. So keep doing that in there. I find a lot of really good networking happens sometimes in these chats too, which is always fun. So let's jump into it. Taylor, first, do you want to maybe do a quick intro? Talk a little bit about Orum and what you guys are up to.
Yeah, 100%. Really appreciate it, Jake. Thanks everybody for joining. I started as a sales development manager with Orum back in September. It's been a wild ride, an amazing ride. The team here is absolutely incredible. Long story short, we are a AI live conversation platform that helps your sales teams get into more conversations over the phone faster, book more meetings. My career was a little unorthodox. I actually came from the food tech space. Started as a business development manager, worked my way up to senior business development manager, then running the whole market as a director of sales, but realized that I kind of missed that itch from mentoring and coaching and really helping to grow reps from starting their careers into hopefully incredible account executives. So ventured into the sales development space, and here I am, and happy to have my footing here with Orum.
I love it, man. Well, again, hey, this is where you're at. You found your path, for now. Who knows what the next 3 or 4 years. So let's kind of, dive in here, and feel free, folks. Like, I'll be monitoring the chat. So if you have questions, I've got LinkedIn pulled up over here as well, too. If you're joining us on LinkedIn, if you're live on the Zoom, be selfish. That's what I tell everyone in these types of talks. Like, we are going to get very tactical, but if in your mind you're like, Jake, I have no clue what the hell you guys are talking about, or if, you've got a very specific question, be selfish. Ask the question, because probably 5 other people are thinking about it, as a part of that. So let's dive into the first one here. So this idea of personalization, right? And, personalization and relevant messaging being kind of like number one, right? And a lot of people talk about this, like the idea of personalization, like, is not like a new one. And then it was personalization at scale, which really was just custom fields disguised as customization. What are some of the best practices that you all practice around this concept of personalization and relevancy?
Yeah, I think it's a great talking point, and I think that your modern outbound playbook that I think you're going to share after this call gets into a lot of the personalization, and we'll dig deep here. But one thing that I will say is, and I think in that book you mentioned that you can automate 80% of the process, right? But the remaining 20% is really where you have to sell the value and the personalization, and when you really have to dig deep to think outside of the box. But before you can get to that point, you really have to dig into your base, into your sequencing, into your messaging to make sure that you're set up for success, right? So it takes some time to do, it takes some time to craft, but what does that look like? What does that 80% automation look like? For Orum, for us specifically, we've done a few things for us this year, which have been game changers for us. For one is we've created persona-based templates that automatically match to the persona fields you have in outreach. So if I'm reaching out to a chief revenue officer, the messaging is going to be vastly different than like reaching out to like a sales development manager like myself.
Yep.
Another thing that we do, this has been kind of like the brainchild behind my boss, Terry, is we've created conveyor belt messaging. And this one is really cool, where we actually match sequences based off the dispositions that we have when we log a call. So say, for instance, if we log a call as like answered follow-up required, we can
Yep.
then put that person to a sequence that has messaging matched exactly around that. The same thing for our objections. So if we log a call as not a priority at this time, our prospect says, "Hey, Taylor, Orum sounds great, but reach back out to us next quarter." We can be like, okay, we can plug that prospect into a sequence after the call that has specific strategic outreach steps that are aligned based off their timeline. It does take definitely some coaching, because your reps have to remember to place that prospect into the call after they log it, to place the
Sure.
prospect into the sequence. But once it's working for you, it's automatic, and it really makes the process pretty seamless. Another key component for us too is just constantly updating our messaging, right? And being
There you go.
fresh. Like, you never want to stick the same people in the sequences twice, of course. So what we do is, for instance, right now we're getting into next year, we want to revamp our messaging, heading into the new year. Leverage the creative forces of your team. We have some amazing email copywriters. So we've like added a spiff. Hey, if you want your sequences or your templates to be in our master, $25 Amazon gift card for anything that's submitted to us. Any winning email copy that we include, $100 Amazon gift card. So make it fun, make it compelling.
I
But
love
with
that.
that said, Jake, I wanted to hand it back to you. I think a lot of people get apprehensive about building out that backbone of sequences and templates, and really that automation piece, right? So my question for you is, how do you recommend teams building out that optimization?
Oh, it's such a good question. I'll give you kind of the today versus tomorrow answer. I'll give both. Today, I think one of the big issues is we treat building out relevant messaging like a campaign. And what I mean by that is we think of it as like a sprint, where
Mhm.
it's like, okay, it's 6 months, and so we're going to redo this thing. And the analogy that I make quite a bit for organizations is just that we've got to change the way we think about sequencing and think of it as a performance based optimization. That, to your point, like, you've got your SDRs, they're pumping tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of data points through a system every 2 weeks or maybe every week. Guess what? Like, you can optimize that, right? It's like, I always give the analogy, if you're spending, $100,000 a month on SDRs, to generate qualified opportunities. Well, if you're spending $100,000 on Google AdWords to generate qualified opportunities, of course you're spending 10 to 20% of that budget to optimize it. Of course you are. You're not just going to keep running the same banner ads no matter what the click-through rate is. Why are we running our SDR teams like a sprint campaign versus always optimization, which is kind of what you talked about? And so, for me, I love what you talked about with persona-based messaging. I think that's actually a skill that we're not training on enough, to where we're teaching, what does this person care about in this type of economy? What do people in this industry care
Exactly.
about versus this industry? And I think persona-based, for a lot of organizations, when done very well, is great. Like, that's relevancy all day long.
Mhm.
But I do feel like in 2023, we're going to have to speed up a little bit.
Mhm.
And whether you build it out internally, you work with a firm like ours, really don't care. You have to have this always optimizing mindset around your sequencing and relevancy. And again, just looking at, okay, whoa, why is Chris over here doing better than everyone? Okay, let's just steal. Let's just do that. And now everyone is doing this. And so I do feel like we've got to kind of speed it up a little bit around the messaging and taking what's working. And I love what you guys are doing too, about bring the team along, because they are already trying stuff that you can or can't track. And so bringing them along for the journey, I think is awesome. But again, why don't you do this every week or 2 weeks would be my all right. I love this. Griffin just dropped a question in here. Let's dive into our second one. Griffin, this is an awesome one. Ebony also +1, which is like, education about how to tailor messaging to current times would be really helpful, especially for those who have not lived through uncertain times, or like we're in now. Although I think everyone went through 2020, which was a totally different uncertain time than, like, I was sold through the last, I guess, economic downturn back in the late 2000s. So I can definitely share there. But I think our topic 2 that we're going to get to is going to cover some of this. So the next two topics we're going to talk about, and then Ebony, Griffin, we're going to address this head on. So again, keep your questions coming. These are the exact type of questions that all of you should be asking. So keep them coming. So topic 2 and 3 are about leveraging unconventional prospecting. So we're going to talk a little bit about LinkedIn, topic 2, and a little bit about video. So let's talk, for you, Taylor, like how do you think about your team leveraging LinkedIn today, particularly?
Yeah, love that question. First off, I have to say that the Orum leadership team is so like they empower their reps to post daily on LinkedIn, right? And I've been a part of orgs before in the past where, say, if a rep wanted to post like a custom meme with like branding, you had to funnel
Right.
it up through marketing to get restrictions to pass through, and that really handcuffs your reps,
Yeah.
right? It's terrible. We're all responsible adults. We know what we should and what we shouldn't be posting. And Orum really lets reps have free reins for posting what they want to post on the platform. But I will say that a lot of the heavy hitters from our organization that you see posting content daily, they've built up some social proof around cold calling and have really become
Right.
experts in the skill of cold calling. And people follow and gravitate towards that. But one of the things I'm sure you've seen posted if you follow like Avi or Shara or Aaron is you see them actually post the statistics live from our platform, from our dialer. So you can see that, hey, Avi did 130 dials, had 12 connects, 5 conversations, and 2 meetings booked in like 45 minutes. That's eye-opening for other people to see, right? So that automatically helps kind of create that kind of Orum buzz.
Right.
Um, on top of that, I think it's really whether it's myself or our reps, just being extremely genuine on the platform. So as we all know, reps, sales comes and goes in waves, right? And our reps aren't always talking about the meetings that they booked or how many calls they blasted out. We're also talking about the bad days, how many times we've got hung up on. We didn't hit quota for a period, or we didn't get the meeting booked for a day. I think just having that transparency makes us come across as extremely relevant on the platform, which resonates with a lot of people. And the third point I would say, and this is very much common sense, but we like, share, comment, engage all of our coworkers post. So we have a Slack channel where somebody posts something new, they post it into the channel. We know to go in there and to blow that up. Like I have friends that go on that text me and say, "Hey Taylor, like Orum is like blown up my LinkedIn like feed. That's like all I see." It's because we're constantly liking and sharing that type of stuff. We've created such a buzz on LinkedIn and a sense of FOMO that when we're reaching out to prospects and saying like, "Hey, have you heard about Orum?" Now 9 times out of 10, they're saying yes because of like what they've actually seen on LinkedIn.
I think that's such a smart call out. And I think, look, as email continues to be a difficult way to cut through just because of the volume that we get, I am doing an exercise, Taylor. I think I was talking to you about this on our prep. So this week, I'm responding to every single cold email, no matter how
Yes.
bad it is. I'm saying,
Yes.
tell me more. It's going very interesting. So I'm excited to share those results. But I think for a lot of people, the future will be, and again, both Scaled and Orum, we have the advantage of, salespeople are on LinkedIn and we sell to salespeople too, and so we can talk about sales and we can talk, and it's relevant to our business, right?
Yep.
And what I would say with LinkedIn is people right now, what you could sell into HR, you could sell into finance, and the strategy is identical. Meaning, if I'm thinking about how do I get a finance person involved, again, it's the same thing. I'm sharing insights. I'm sharing. Here's what we're seeing. I had a couple other conversations with XYZ people. This is what they're going through. And then you could use that in your warm outbound later, around like, hey, like, do you see this post that my leader put out? I just think there's a lot of opportunity right now for people to, even if you don't sell to salespeople, are you maxing out your connection requests every day in your territory? Connecting
Mhm.
with all the different potential influencers in finance. Are you putting out relevant one post? You can just you can reappropriate like a blog post or something, and you can just put your own spin on it. So there's just a lot of different ways that you can get engagement. And I do feel like to cut through the noise in the future, the people that have built that take the time to do that are just going to have a cheat code unfair advantage. you know,
Yeah.
and I think if you don't have that, if you don't have that, you know, that ability to cut through the noise because you've built it up, I just think it's going to be hard, you know, to cut through it. And that kind of goes to Griffin and Ebony's question here. And I'll let you take this one, Taylor. I'll give my hot take on it. I what I feel like is, and you know, it's interesting. I was having this conversation with our marketing team last week, and I was like, just take a step back and you just think, okay, what is a sales leader probably going through right now? And if you don't know, you ask them. You just DM them. Hey, I'm doing research on XYZ. Hey, like, what are the top trends in HR? You could also Google it. Top trends in HR and employee relations for 2023. Okay, that's what I probably will talk about. So for me, Griffin, Ebony, if I ever am in doubt of how to tailor message, I go to Google and I just Google what the trends are, and I pull out data from Gartner, Forrester, Harvard Business Review, whatever it is. And then I just see if that resonates. Hey, from what I understand, many CHROs are thinking about XYZ next year, right? And if these are going to be two big trends, how are you thinking about that, Lisa? So I got to be honest, like, it just is the cheat code. And now, oh my, don't get me started with what is it? Chat. Why am I blanking on it right now? Oh, Chat GPT.
The chat bot.
Holy shit.
Yeah,
If you guys are not using Chat GPT right now, like,
it's incredible.
I mean, my God, if you don't think this is going to replace a lot of people, I've been messing with this all like this whole week. I put, how do you run LinkedIn ads? And it's like, how do you close enterprise sales? Like, it's bonkers. But anyway, I don't try to come up with a lot of original thought. I borrow from the internet, and I borrow, and if the internet doesn't give me the right answers, then I'm just going to ask people and not try to guess like what's going on. And Ebony's question for you, Taylor, was just, if you're in computer software, you're selling that, how would you kind of adjust your strategy on LinkedIn? I think I gave you some ideas.
Yeah.
How would you do it?
You really hit the nail on the head, Jake. It's really as simple as, and this is going to be a running theme throughout this discussion, I think, but finding relevance, right? So what's relevant to these people, to your personas in the computer software space? You know what I mean? Like, understandably right now, there's a ton of stuff in the news about layoffs and things like that. So aligning your messaging with really digging into the pain and understanding like what they're going through, showing empathy for the space. I think that's really important. So if you can find that relevance and what's going to speak to them, you can bring that message to any buyer that you have. One thing I wanted to ask you, Jake, is, you know, not to switch gears, but one thing that we're trying to roll out into our outbound strategy into 2023 is video, and using video in our outbound motion. I had two questions for you. First off, like, I see you have a very, you know, fancy professional looking setup. If I turn off my Orum background, you would see my basement, aka man cave, that I like to call it. Not nearly as nice. So how would you recommend people going from, like, say, like a B level setup to like an A level setup, for one? And B, just how would you recommend adding video into your outreaches and your sequences and stuff like that?
Yeah. This is a great one. So LinkedIn, there's a lot of different, I mean, obviously I'm active and the company's active there too. But video to me, and again, you don't have to have the fancy setup. Well, here's what I would say. Like, I'll just tell you, like, data wise, some of my top performing videos ever on LinkedIn were ones that I shot like on my phone and just kind of went off the cuff a little bit. So I think for a lot of you, you don't need to do this. I mean, I would highly invest. Look, we're in digital selling now. Okay. And so you got two choices. You can show up with a crappy webcam or go invest. This is a DSLR. So I don't remember, this is like $1,000 or something. Like, they're cheaper now. False lighting. This is like $10 on Amazon. I don't remember how much the mic was, a few $100. Most of your companies, like, they'll actually pay for it for you. We offer to pay for it. So we pay for everyone to have one of these cameras. This is called a Lumina. So this is like a software enabled camera that costs a couple $100. And anybody who wants one, so that's like my other camera, like in my day-to-day stuff. But what I would say is that it's really difficult to not personalize a video. And so the good part about video today, one, most people are too scared to do it. So that's 90% of people's problem is they're just like, oh, I sound stupid or whatever. And it's like, get over it. Like, do you care more about booking a meeting or that, oh, you think that you look dumb on camera. Because I care more about booking a meeting than I give a shit about if I look dumb on camera. So that's
Amen.
one thing.
Yep.
And number two, just understand that I know that the video is personalized. And so your ability to cut through, I cannot tell, man, what is the percent of videos that I get? 0.5%, maybe less. It might be less than 0.5% of a cold outreach I get is a video. Or using like LinkedIn, and that LinkedIn's got a voicemail feature on mobile, which is another one that people just are sleeping on. Laurel also is kind of echoing that, like, be yourself, keep it relevant. And I think that, look, there's a difference between being professional. I think we've got kind of a false sense of professional. Some people go too far. It's like, well, hello, John. Blah, blah. And then there's also the people that are too casual. It's like the reality is like you got to be somewhere in between here, right? Look, but make sure don't rely on the kitschiness of video. Make sure you've got, like we talked about in topic one, relevancy. Hey, Taylor, I talked to lots of sales development managers now planning for 2023. The number one thing I'm hearing is how do we get, we're not going to be necessarily increasing headcount. And so how do we continue to increase the performance? I know I saw this thing that you're doing. I think there might be a way that we can help. Let me know if it's okay if I send you. We're seeing a lot of permission-based versus going straight for the call to action on the video as well, too. Like, hey, let me know, Taylor, if it's all right. I'm just going to forward you over a couple of details. And then if that resonates, let's set up time. And then the conversion rate on that's bonkers. So I just think it's something that, why not add it to your toolkit? Like, my gosh, like, what's the alternative? You're just going to keep sending a bunch of emails, so yeah. I'm a big fan of video. And again, Laurel called it out. Almost every rep, I know there's a rep at Adobe. She's an SDR. She's like, I just send 20 videos a day and crush my numbers.
It's amazing.
She's like, I finally went and sat with my boss. I'm like, look, I'm not doing, because she, it's also a great medium for her, right? Like, she likes it, she enjoys it. And so so I would just say that, try it, go do it, see how it works. Insert it at step 2 or 3, or just, look, again, for me, I don't have a lot of things that I'm like, I refuse to do this if I think that the data is there. And if we're telling you that it works, Laurel's here telling you that it works, like, just try it. Like, what do you have to lose? You're going to go back to hit send all on 100 emails. And how's that working for you? So that's my hot take on video.
I love that. And I think too, it's okay to be uncomfortable with video, right? Like, nobody's going to start doing video and be a pro at it. Like, you're going to fumble over your words. You're going to probably shoot a couple takes, but try not to shoot 30, right? Like, just get your message out and get your call to action and blast it off. And understand that if you fumble over a word or two, you're human. The person that's receiving that is not going to think less of you based off you fumbling over a word.
That's such a good call, because again, it goes back to, I'll talk about LinkedIn. Almost every single one of my top performing posts ever had a typo in it.
Yeah.
I read back and read it, and I'm like, I forgot the why. Like I just did there with Griffin. Who is our buyer? I meant to type your. Nobody cares. Like we don't latch onto that anymore. And that's why, again, like, you don't have to have like a super professional setup necessarily, because we're okay with it. We're all content creators. We're all using our phone here and, creating content to some extent. All right. So that's 2 and 3. So we talked about LinkedIn. We talked about video. Again, keep the questions coming. Ebony, hopefully we answered there. I think you work at Articulate. I was just Googling you. But again, like what I would think of, which is a training app, I would think about, again, what are either HR leaders or what are those people going through? Hey, like right now, my guess is next year, like if I was selling Articulate, I'd be like, look, my guess, HR leaders, next year, you're going to be hiring a lot less people. And the people that you do hire are going to need to get up to speed faster than ever before. I'm going to help to decrease your employee ramp time by 25%. Let's set up time to meet. Again, I'm just obsessed with what the customer's going through. So I don't know, Ebony, if that's you that works at Articulate, but I was just stalking you on the side over here. Don't worry about it. So the other thing, number 4, is relevant gifting. Okay. This, to me, I just read a book. It's called Giftology. Everybody read this book. I listened to it. I guess listened to it in like a day and a half. It's called Giftology. It will blow your mind on how to do gifting. Okay. And again, I saw a hilarious post on LinkedIn. It's like, Starbucks stock is suffered this quarter because SDRs aren't offering as many $5 gift cards to take a meeting or something like that. It was pretty, I thought it was pretty humorous, but this book talks a lot about relevancy. again, most of the gifts I get, I'm allergic to gluten. Okay. Stop sending me these gift boxes that have like pretzels and stuff. And they're gluten free. Like, that's great. But most of the time they're not. I think what's happened is with gifting, and why we're going to, we'll talk about relevant gifting. I'm going to turn it over to you, Taylor, talk a little bit about what you guys do. And is it doesn't take that hard to be relevant. It just takes a little bit of extra work, a little bit, to then cut through the noise. Like, I'll give you a good example. We hosted a exec dinner in Miami. And so actually, I think they're getting shipped out today. So if anyone's listening, it was at a really high-end sushi restaurant. So what did we do? We got everyone's name engraved on this really high-end knife that says like Dunlap Kitchen, right? It costs us $60, right? How do you take that experience? Well, we already paid for dinner. That wasn't cheap, right? Man, but guess what? Those people are going to remember that. And all of you, if you're going to, like, my advice around gifting is it doesn't take that much or cost that much money to take a gift from a here, because it's not about the amount of money you spend. And that's what I loved about this book. It's about the thought. Mm-hmm. And so imagine that's something they're going to pull out, they're going to use with their family, and it costs us $60, I think, total, per person. So, for me, I feel like gifting is a fantastic way to stand out. But again, be smart about it, be relevant. And then how are you guys thinking about that? Right? Like the old meeting over coffee, or, those other things that, again, like what most of you don't understand about this. Okay. Do you know how much I bill an hour? Do you guys have any concept of what my billable rate is? It's a lot of fucking money. Okay. And I'm going to tell you right now, I like Starbucks. I drink Starbucks sometimes. It ain't worth $5 or even $25. And so that's not going to be as relevant to me. So again, if you're just gifting, expecting the gift to do the work without the relevancy, it doesn't work, especially as you start to get up the chain. So what have you guys done, Taylor? I talked about kind of my high horse over here about relevancy. What have you all done to cut through the noise and make it relevant?
Yeah. So one thing that we do, I'm laughing, I'm chuckling as you're mentioning the Starbucks gift cards, because we definitely do a fair share of those, but we do it in a different way, right? We do what we like to call coffee and cool calls. So not only are we delivering like the tangible gift card and the coffee, which you can claim or whatnot, but we're actually offering and inviting our target prospects or our personas to actually come on to our platform with us and actually sit down with us and watch us make cold calls together.
I love that.
Which is amazing, right? And keep in mind, like our people we're selling into are other salespeople, right? And other sales teams. So they're doing cold calling on a daily basis. So if they hop onto our platform with us and they're listening to us get hung up on or get told to F off or whatever else may be, it's a laugh because it's relatable.
I love that.
But above all else, Jake, what happens more often than not on these calls is we book meetings live in front of them, right? With prospects that we call
done. That's a done deal. That's
such done deal. Signed, sealed, delivered, right?
It's over. I love that.
That sells the magic itself. So yeah, so we send a tangible gift, but then we sell the relevance, being like, come join us. Watch me bomb a few phone calls. Watch me excel on a few phone calls. Celebrate my victories with me and laugh at what doesn't go so hot. And the sales teams just eat it up. They love it because they're like, hey, we can do this with our team, but our gifting goes a bit beyond that, like we obviously do like the $20 like lunch and learns and whatnot with DoorDash coupons. But one of my favorite techniques, and this was actually taken from one of our customers, Gong, and it's a little unorthodox, but we have about 100% meeting to conversion rate.
Who cares if it's unorthodox? It's like, you're gonna.
I know.
About Outbound today. It's like we have this strive. We're striving for like automation and like what we deem as repeatable. And because something is like a little manual, we're like, well, that's not automated. It's like, who cares if it's automated or like if it converts, if you can make 20 videos. Anyway, so
it converts. So what we did is, any enterprise accounts that we were targeting that we saw recently got a new round of funding, right? Like say they were a unicorn account that we wanted to go after. So we would look up their executive team on white pages and see if we could find their home address, right? And then we would actually, we would send them a box of cookies to their home address with a simple note, right? And the note would say, these cookies are sweet, but raising 30 million is even sweeter. Congrats from the team at Orum, right? Whether you're a fan of desserts or snacks or something like that, like that's memorable. That's going to stand out to you as a prospect, right? And sure enough, like I said, those meetings converted, that the act of doing that converted into meetings. So I think it's worth just going above and beyond in some cases, especially if we're going after like a heavy hitter to stand out, right?
Yeah. And it's, again, like I said, it's not that difficult, to do this. Like, there, how much publicly available information there is on people online? There's a lot. And so to do something, and again, everything you're talking about isn't just the gift, there's a relevant component, and I think that that's the key, around gifting in particular. If you're going to do it, add the relevant component. I'm actually speaking at Sendoso's conference here in next month, and that's certainly going to be a big topic here as a part of it. I'm going to go back. Actually, we actually did get a question here that I missed. It says, how did your team actually get reps to post regularly? Did you just, so this is going back to the LinkedIn, and this is probably a question other people had too. Did you just open it up and people just went for it? Or how does your team, get people to actually put content out? Because I think that that's, a challenge for sure.
Quite honestly, the team was posting regularly before I joined. But what I think happened is I think we had a few, I would say, poll setters that were active on the platform that people would see be posting daily, sharing their content, posting daily, putting their struggles, putting their celebrations and their victories on the platform. And I think that just, quite frankly, influenced other members on the team to do the same thing. They saw their engagement levels raise. They saw their follower account raise.
Yeah.
Like, oh my God, like this isn't as hard as we think it is, right? So I think you just need a few like poll setters on your team that's going to start off by doing it. And I think we hired a few people who are just daily content creators, and that raised the bar for everybody else and pushed them to start posting as well.
Yeah, I agree. I think, and if you don't have that and you want to be the poll setter, the easiest way to get started, like I said, for a lot of people, is just go look at some interesting content your company's put out. Don't share the link, just kind of repurpose it and talk about it, or the other, I think, really easy one is you just had a conversation with a customer, share some insights, and you don't have, keep it anonymous. I just think there's a lot of different ways to kind of get posting. I also have found that the teams where the executives post have a lot higher success rate and like get out there. So get your CEO's butt posting, and you're going to have a higher rep, because that's your CEO is getting permission. I've definitely had employees do posts about Jake Dunlap before too, but I don't censor them. Somebody gets mad at me, like I'm like, dude, that is 100% about an interaction we had, whatever it was. So I've had that happen, but look, I tell them the same thing, like, hey, cool. I'd rather you do that. It's always Mike Tomlin, coach for the Steelers. He's like, I'd rather, tell somebody, whoa, than sick them, so I'd rather people go out and do it than, and you gotta, but I pretty much don't rein people in.
Speaking of CEOs posting, I would love to, you touched upon this briefly, but I'd love to go back to that post you did recently about taking the 100% of your cold calls, right?
That was weird, man. I couldn't believe, like, I'm looking at it now, it's got like 100,000 impressions. I'm like, I did this thing like on a Sunday. I'm like, that was pretty hilarious.
What were your takeaways on that?
So that's our fifth one here, everyone. Warm calling, all right, as a part of this. The bar is so low. Like, just I think my biggest takeaway, I was really shocked at nobody really even an educated guess at what might be relevant. So like the example I gave Ebony, right, about what an HR leader might be going through today and a value prop I might, kind of throw at them to see if it stuck. I was just pretty shocked at how the typical cold call was, hey, what's going on? Oh, hey, Jake, this is blah, blah, blah with so-and-so. I got a lot of people trying to give us money, like financing. Those people were, hey, what would you do? We're doing blah, blah, blah financing. What would you do with $100,000 extra dollars? I'm like, well, we don't really need funding right now. And some of those people, I kid you not, just like straight hung up after I said like not interested. And then even the ones I took from tech companies, every single one basically launched into it. And the question that they asked me had nothing to do or showed zero insight into something I might actually be going through. It's, hey, Jake, we work with other, the closest was like, we work with other professional services companies. But it's not like, look, Jake, as a CEO of a professional services company, I'm sure there's a lot of uncertainty for you right now. You know, when I talk to other CEOs, they're thinking about right sizing for next year and da 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 da. How, like, zero of that, zero. And so I just think, candidly, Taylor, the bar is very low for calls. And that, again, like I put this on here, like I'm a big fan of cold calls. Like I think that, you know, a lot of our clients that are winning and actually seeing results are have calls as a key part of it, but they're doing the things we talked about before. They're doing like the quick 2 minutes of prep, or even like, you know, pulling it up in real time as they're dialing. That's what we used to do back in the day. So yeah, it was pretty disappointing that it was just like there was no relevancy, you know, as a part of it.
Yeah, I know for us personally, like relevancy is king. You can personalize as much as you want, but if you're not adding that relevancy, you're not going to get your prospects to engage. You know, for us, it's very easy to get, you know, attracted to the low hanging fruit, right? Like every SDR in the game is going on to like your LinkedIn page to see if they can find something to customize, what school you went to,
You
so
went to
on and so
ASU. I got one of those yesterday.
Yep,
Oh,
yep,
I saw you went to ASU. My brother goes to ASU. Why do I care? I don't care about your brother going to,
exactly.
I mean, like, why do you, the college one is the biggest joke. You know, I did go to like a Missouri State. So like, I do have a soft spot when people have went there. But for the most part, it's like, it's still not going to get me to like do anything
No,
necessarily.
no, it doesn't resonate with you. So it's like, what can you do? Where can you look to find that messaging that stands out? You know, so at Orum, you know, especially for like, you know, a big publicly traded company, if you're going after you know, somebody that has these types of things out, look up a company's like 10K reports if they're out there. And if there's somebody on people on the line that are familiar with 10K reports, it's essentially annual financial summaries of a company, right? And from this report, you can like take so much nuggets of information, like what strategies they have going into the following year, you know, what their goals are, like how do they stack up against their competitors, what their headcount is, have they grown, have they downsized? There's so many nuggets in here that's really going to speak to people on from an executive level all the way down. So that's a great resource. I mean, I love personally myself coaching my reps to go beyond just like URL searching. Anybody can
Yeah.
go on a prospect's website or a company's page and see like what they do, but actually like dig into that website, like click into like the blogs page, for instance, and see what relevant content they're posting. I'm not
It takes
talking
two
about like,
seconds, two
yeah, like
seconds to do what you just did there.
they could be posting like, you know, maybe they won best places to work. I'm not talking about that because people are like latching onto that
Yeah.
constantly, but maybe they won some niche award that they're really proud of, right? That you can speak upon. More often than not, like you're a CEO, like see what the CEOs and the founders and the executive team are posting on LinkedIn, right? See what they care about, what they're talking about, what they're engaging with, and then tailor your messaging around
Yep.
that. So like that's how we coach our team on warm calling, and it's literally so easy to do.
Yeah. I think again, for anybody listening, it just, you just need this much, man. Just don't talk about the college. Just anything, people, anything. God, I wish they would mention the blog. And even I would say, just to kind of take a step further, Taylor, then I get the emails where they mention the blog or something, and then it's like completely irrelevant to what they're reaching out for.
Yep,
I'm like,
yep.
hey, Jake, I just saw this. It was really interesting. Are you in the market for like an HRS system? I'm like, like you can't just take the 5 seconds to try to think how these things might connect. So again,
Connect the
for anyone, like
dots.
I really, yeah, I really encourage everyone. It's like just 1 minute. The bar is low. You know, hopefully you're, you know, the other thing I think about, and I'll just throw this out there, it's maybe a little different, Taylor, than what we've talked about, is I also think that we've lost the mindset of, you know, we're so focused on these activities. The mindset is I'm trying to get a meeting with Taylor, right? And I'm not gonna, I want to get a meeting. Like that is my job, is to get a meeting with this person, versus my job is to do these activities. and hope that a couple of people fall through. I feel like a lot of SDRs have lost sight of that look, you've got 400 people that you need to try to get a meeting with, not to sequence or to do whatever. You should sequence them, but and I feel like if your mindset is truly, I want to get a meeting with Jake because I can help him, you're gonna just take it that extra step further of like going a little out of your way. That's going to make a big difference. So anyway, that was just more of my high horse here. All right. So we've got one last topic here, metrics that back into revenue. We'll take this. We got another follow-up question here. So before we go into metrics, which by the way, if you are an SDR seller, this is for you. I've got a great story I'll tell you our first question that we got here, Taylor. There was a follow-up. Do you recommend compensating employees for posting? I'm a hard no on that. Like, I wouldn't compensate you to post and build your own network. Like, you're doing this for yourself to build your own reputation. I want you to, I'd rather you see the value. I wouldn't compensate someone.
I wouldn't advise it either. I mean, LinkedIn is your own personal brand, and while you're working for your specific company, you know what I mean? Yeah, you're tethered to your company, but LinkedIn is really your own content creation. So I typically wouldn't compensate for that either.
Yeah. All right. So this is a good one. So we're talking about warm calling. I really like this question. It says, how would you define warm calling? I've been hearing competing things of just a well-researched prospect, which we talked a little bit about, or a prospect who has themselves been warmed up and interacted with the company one way or another. What's your take on that? I've got my take, Taylor. What are your thoughts on that? What is a warm?
That's a really interesting. I think it can probably go a little bit of both ways, right? Like we all have warm inbounds and stuff like that, and people who are familiar with your product or your company or your platform. But warm calling for me is essentially selling with relevancy, right? It's figuring out where you can bring in that pain. And like you said, the messaging about the blogs and the 10K reports, and it's not just calling completely cold. It's actually delivering them something of value that they can hold on to. So that's how I would take it, but would love to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, I it's interesting. I think these two things can be intertwined a little bit. And just follow me here, anonymous attendee, very cryptic. Ideally, I would say if you can do the latter, which is, and by the way, the latter doesn't mean they attended a webinar, downloaded something. Just so you guys know, my friends, that's not a qualified lead, just to be very clear. You are not an MQL if you download or attend this webinar for that matter. Like, you're not going to then be sequenced because you attended a webinar, which I think is silly that people do that. But if there is some level of warm, so how I would maybe think about it as similar to what you said, Taylor, and maybe your former explanation. Yeah, if it was the latter where someone has, obviously book a demo or something like that's different, right? That's like, that's hot. Yeah, right, that's hot. Yeah. That's not warm. That's hot. So, what is warm? Well, if I'm reaching out because I have found a very specific thing that you said that is very relevant to what we do, that to me is good enough. That plays. Sure, if I maybe been educated and done some other things, or maybe I've attended 3 webinars or something like that, sure, I could see some of that first party data being helpful. But I think about warm calling is like, I have an intent and a real reason for engaging with this person, not just because I'm going through my call number 75 for today. So that's how I would answer it. Like, can you really back up why you're reaching out to this person? Or, is it just because it's next up on your list? Which, not that that's not the end of the world, but okay, last but not least, metrics. Okay, metrics that back into revenue. For all of you who are on this call and you are SDRs, we've got a lot of SDRs that have joined us on LinkedIn. We've got a lot of SDRs that have joined us on Zoom. You need to know your data and your numbers. I cannot stress this enough. Stop looking at your sales ops team and stop looking at your manager. You need to know how you convert. And this is one of the biggest misses that I see with sales reps today. And I'll tell a story back to my very first job out of college. I worked for the Tampa Bay Rays. Okay. We were the worst team in Major League Baseball, and they still play in the worst stadium in Major League Baseball. No offense to my friends in Tampa, but you guys know the stadium's not great. And what I did after the first season, so we had this, if you guys listen to my content, you might have heard this stories, but I'll tell it for those who haven't. We had a phone loop for inbound leads. And so what would happen is if you picked up the phone, you were on the phone, then it would go to the next person. And so what I did, again, my boss didn't tell me to do this. My manager, my VP, I'm like, how do I close more? Like, I want more deals. Like, I need to know. So I mapped I did a scatter plot of every single inbound lead that converted that year. And what I did is I found these gaps. Nobody called between like 11 and 11:30. Nobody called between 2 and 2:30. Nobody called from like 4 to 4:30. So I found these gaps. And while all my peers were making calls all day long, right? And I'll talk about how they fixed this after a few weeks, but I didn't do a thing. I did my emails, I did everything else. 11:30, bam, 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 did all my calls. And so guess what happened? Here was the phone loop. They're all calling. Tampa Bay Rays, this is Jake. Tampa Bay Rays, this is Jake. Tampa Bay Rays, this is Jake. And so they got pissed. So my coworkers start to get pissed. I'm getting all the inbound leads and I'm hitting my cold call numbers. I showed them the report, Taylor. I said, guys, this is why I'm doing it. Look at the data. The data says this is when I should cold call because I'll get more inbound leads too. And they didn't do it. I'm like, why are you? I'm literally showing you the data. And again, it goes back to like, I don't know why. Again, like I excelled at stats, not math so much, but stats I love. And I just don't understand why more SDRs aren't paying attention to their metrics. Like I want to convert more people. I'm always looking for the shortcut. I'm always looking, I was already a top performer and then I was just crushing everybody. And I really feel like metrics for you, if you don't know what converts for you, you don't know where your strengths are. It's just a massive miss to think that it's your sales ops job or somebody else to know your data and how you perform and your rhythms for you. And so there's a little bit of a high horse of story in there for everyone. But again, for all of you, I want you to think about that. How many conversations do I need to have with people saying, I'll book a meeting with you. Let me look at it, or let me get you in touch, to then book a meeting. Maybe I don't need 100 activities. I need 5 meaningful conversations a day. Cool. That's my number. Susan needs 3. Johnny needs 1. I don't give a shit. My boss tells me you need to do X, Y, Z. I'm not listening. I'm not listening. I need to know what my numbers are. What do I need to do? Because your boss is just managing you to the mean. They're saying on average, it takes blah to get to blah to blah. But you need to know your numbers. And so for me, if you want to cut through the noise next year, learn your own numbers. So there you go. That was a little bit of a rant, but I can tell you it's one of the main reasons I've been very, very, very successful is because I know my numbers, consistently. So Taylor, how do you think about that?
Yeah, perfect segue. You just mentioned a word that I love and that I harp on constantly to my team is consistency, right? So so our metrics, we're lucky, they do back into revenue, right? So we have our reps do 150 calls, 10 connects, 5 conversations, meeting booked every day, ideally, with an additional like 30 net new prospects added to sequence. And truthfully, 100 calls in Orum is like 45 minutes, right?
Yeah,
So
exactly.
that's the easy part for us.
That makes it a lot more feasible.
But that also allows us to, again, focus on that hyper personalization and to really focus on having those human and engaging conversations with live prospects. But with that said, to your point, it's being consistent in the process. The SDR job is hard. It's a grind. We can coach on qualification rates. We can coach if you're not getting the meetings booked in a given day.
Yeah.
We can coach on email copywriting and personalizing your sequences. But what we can't coach on is you actually picking up the phone every day and hitting your KPIs, you hitting 150 dials, you finding those 30 net new people that you want to reach out to. So I always recommend consistency. If you're constantly filling your funnel, it's going to pay off for you. And on top of that, to the point that you said, like, use the data that's available to you. To your story about the Rays, we just recently discovered that, our prime golden hours for our connect rates is from like 3 to 5 p.m. like Eastern time, right? Most people would think, oh no, that's the end of the day. People are getting ready to check out for the day, No, like we're going to call you at 5:15, 5 o'clock. And that's when people are picking up. So that data is available for us right there in Outreach. So use what's at your disposal, and you're going to find that more often than not, the data is going to work for you.
I love that. And again, like I said, like know your own numbers. I
Mhm.
cannot stress this enough for you as a rep. You know, Taylor and even his reps, right? Like you have your numbers, you know what? Great. These are the numbers we know that it takes for people to get there. Fantastic. And I think, you know, what I also find with a lot of leaders, and people ask me, but Jake, I think I can get there this way or that way. I'm like, amazing. Most of your leaders are sane people. And so if you go to your leader and say, I'm going to do exactly what you're telling me to do, I'm happy to do it, love to do it. But the next 2 weeks, I'm also going to try this other thing. I'm going to do 15 videos, okay, a day. And if I do that, can we look at what my metrics might look like? Most managers are going to go, okay, sure. Like, look, man, if you're doing your thing and you can show me there's a way to break this thing and we can do it, great. Love it.
Mhm.
And so I just, for a lot of you, I think, you know, who are like, this all sounds great, just make a deal with your boss. Most bosses are not insane people. And if you do, just tell them you're going to keep doing the normal work first. I'll keep doing that for the next 3 weeks, but I'm going to bring you the data of what I did, the experiment I tested, and what the results were. And if it doesn't work, great. I still was doing the other thing and I'm hitting my numbers. As opposed to saying like, I think if we do this, it'll be better. It's like, okay, great. Yeah, sure. Sounds good. But I know that this will actually, you know, get you
Yeah.
there.
Love a good
So
experiment. If one of my reps did that, I'd be all for it. And I
all
encourage that
day,
all the time.
all day. Again, like I'm always looking for the laziest way to get the best results, as you can tell by my Tampa Bay story. So look, Taylor, this is a lot of fun, man. I really enjoyed the conversation. I hope everyone listening on LinkedIn, everyone listening on Zoom had a ton of takeaways. I know I did. And I think, you know, look, you can be successful today. You can be don't you know, again, I worked at at the time in the late 2000s. So going back to this, like what you sold in the late 2000s, I worked at Career Builder. Okay. We were the largest job website. We just passed Monster. And this is 2007, 2008, 2009. Okay. The economy, who is hiring? You know, people are like trying to slash budgets. My team was the number one team out of 23 teams 2 years in a row. And I'll tell you the reason for that. One, I was good at recruiting. If I want to just be candid with myself, I was good at finding the next best talent. But two is my team knew better than most teams how to talk about business value. Let's not talk about XYZ. You know, I know you're still hiring for software engineers. Let me put together a strategy for how we're going to help you to find software engineers, you know, or XYZ. Like my team became experts in the industry, the space, what customers and buyers are going through. So if you're struggling with, you know, some of this, just go back to that's the basics, man. If you go back and you just really obsess over, man, what are these people going through? And you can now, you know, you can Google, there's a lot of different ways and use a lot of the techniques we talked about today. There's just so much good stuff in here. So Taylor, thanks for doing this, man. This is a lot of fun. I hope everyone had a lot of takeaways and is excited to go and run into 2023 with some of the things we're talking about.
Thanks for having me. It was a blast.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you, everyone. If I don't talk to you, have a happy holidays. I don't know if I'm doing a LinkedIn Live next week. I can't remember. I am going to Houston to watch the Chiefs play the Houston Texans. So I'll be coming back on Monday. So we'll see if I do a live then. So join me at 11 or I'll do something pre-recorded for everyone. So thanks, everybody. Appreciate you joining, Taylor. Thank you. Everyone, go check out Orum, and we will see you all next week.
Take care, all.